And the Quay Quarter Tower here in Sydney is a pretty remarkable project, and we'll get into that. But first, why don't you just describe how this project came to be?
Oh, we were invited for a competition that's 4.5 years ago. We so lucky to win it after 2-stage competition, And it's amazing. I've been coming to Sydney for the last 20 years, and this is our breakthrough. First Danish architects after Nielsen, of course.
That's right, the designer of the Sydney Opera House. Was the first Dane to build a building in Sydney, and now you'll be the second.
Exactly. That's exciting.
Big shoes to fill, I guess.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we actually work with the building in a sculptural way, because he worked very sculptural with the Opera House, and we want to make a salute to his building as well.
Sculpturally, describe the building as it's planned now and how that's referencing that sculptural tradition.
From the beginning of, we actually wanted to, as I say, make a salute to his building, but at the same time, we don't believe in doing form for form's sake. So there was some constraints on the site. Luckily, there was the first high-rise in Australia is in front of the building.
33 Alfred Street.
Exactly. So we had to take that into account, and that made us shift the building in different directions. We stacked some, we call it vertical village. We stacked some buildings on top of each other and turned them for different kinds of views, so it didn't look straight into the building in front of it. And that actually made more or less just made the sculptural way of designing the building. And
that must have been a difficult decision at first, because you're right on Sydney Harbour. You've got an iconic view of the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House and the harbour's natural beauty. So it feels like you would want all the views to go that way. But why did you want to stagger them?
There's views everywhere, actually. This is a wonderful place, and it's the best site in Sydney, more or less, I think. So wherever you look, there's a wonderful view. So it's actually not a big issue. So the lower floors have some views, and the upper floors has some other views, and I think that makes a diversity in the building too, which I think is important.
And what's really remarkable about this project is that it's a skyscraper being upcycled. Instead of demolishing the existing building, which is a 1976, I believe, 45 stories or substantial building. Normally, that would be demolished. In this case, you're actually keeping it and then building around and on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's quite exciting, because it is a big issue in many cities with high-rises, that now a lot of high-rises are outdated, and what to do with them.
Right.
Because to demolish a high-rise like that is very expensive, and it's not a sustainable way to do it. So the client came up with this idea about upcycling and using the old construction. And I think it was a great idea, and actually inspired us to work with the building the way that we work with it.
So it actually came from the client initially.
Yeah, it came from the client. Yeah, I think we had one of the best briefs we ever had for a competition. The client had really done the homework, working years before they had the competition, about what to do at the site, and analyzing everything, analyzing the existing construction. What could we do with that? How could that go into play, and analyzing what we should do about the surrounding as well. So we had a quite precise brief, but nevertheless, I think between the 6 different architects, there were 6 very different projects coming out of this, and ours looked very much from the inside out, I think. But we took this existing construction up, demolished only less than 30% of it, kept the core, adding a little bit to the core, and doubled the square meters.
Structurally, how are you able to do that? Because I'd imagine these older buildings were built for a certain era and for a certain amount of floors, and now you're putting more on them.
The funny thing about concrete is that it gets stronger over the years. Over time. So it's not like wood or something else that gets weaker during the years. Concrete actually gets stronger during the years. So it's quite a substantial and strong construction that's there today. So we could use that, and actually it is what comes out of it at the end is a very efficient construction as well. The core to floor rate is one of the best. I've never seen any better actually high-rise than this. 17% floor core to 83% floor plate, and that's a very good rate.
Do you know how much cost savings you were able to get by building on the existing structure instead of starting anew?
No, not in details, but it's not only about cost savings. It is cost savings too. It's not, but it's not. That's not the big case. It's about doing it sustainable as well, and to use the old construction makes really sense in so many ways. And we proved that it doesn't do any unnecessary constraints for the inside of the building. Actually, it helps a little bit. We have something to play up against, you can say. So it gives some other possibilities.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about too, that you didn't feel constrained as an architect, having been told, we want to keep the existing building and you need to put a massive new structure on top of this existing building, which you didn't design. I mean, that seems like a challenge, but I guess you're saying it was a challenge you were happy to accept.
We love challenges. The more challenges, the better architecture we can make. So if that's a challenge, we take it in as a gift and play around it. And we actually, I think we got something more exciting out of it if it wasn't there. So it ended up being a win-win situation, actually.
You mentioned the twisting floor plates.
Yeah.
How else did you respond to the existing building in the current design?
Yeah, how else? We used they had some pretty wide columns in there, and we used them for different kinds of pockets inside the building as well.
Pockets of space?
Pockets of space, yeah.
Huh.
And actually this, that's very big floor plate we're ending up with. And just a big empty floor plate is nothing. You have to have some corners or some pockets or something that divides it up in different ways. And actually the old building helps with that as well. Yeah.
Do you think future tenants, say in a couple of decades, will be aware of the existing structure, or will it seem like it was built like that to begin with?
It will seem like it's built like that from the beginning. You'll not see it at all. It's it will look like a brand new building, an extraordinary building too, I would say. So I think it hasn't been a problem. It has been a positive thing to the whole process.
With the sustainability benefits that you mentioned, it sounds like you think this should be much more common. Right now it's very rare. I don't know of any other example at this scale of a building being upcycled, if we're going to call it that. How do we encourage this to happen more often?
I think this is a good example, and I think that will happen a lot more in the future. I think developers will take that up in the future for sure. And it actually will help develop the cities too, because there's, as I said in the beginning, there's a lot of outdated high-rises, and that needs actually either to be renewed or pulled down or whatever. And this is a way to actually come out with a completely new result. Has nothing whatever to do with the old result. It is completely a different way of looking of a high-rise. Yeah. The old high-rise was just more a floor plate core, floor plate core, floor plate core. But here it's we have the atriums, and there's a lot more to it. We have the facade that is shifting around. So and we have the terraces up in the air. So we're adding a lot of new things that was not there before.
So your firm is also working on redeveloping the Sydney fish market. Tell me about that project.
Yeah, it's not really published. The drawings are not really published yet because it's in the process with the community. But we won the competition and the ideas for that fish market. The fish market is a very important thing for Sydney. When I came here first time more than 20 years ago, I went to the fish market, as I went to the opera, of course. The fish market is a very well-known thing, and now Sydney needs a new fish market, so it's a great job to work on. We think about making it, today is more like in a big box. We're going to do completely the opposite, open it up like a community center as well as a fish market. Really taking the market idea up, making an open structure where people can come and buy the fish and eat and enjoy themselves. Together with, of course, the practical things of the fish market. Has to have the auctions, have to have the loading, have to have the wholesale. All this is combined in this building. But it's going to be a completely new big thing in Sydney. And it's actually one of the biggest investments from the States since the opera. If you look away from all the infrastructure, is of course bigger, but in a building. It's one of the biggest things has happened in Sydney for many years. Yeah.
The fish market project is actually part of a larger urban development scheme. Why don't you tell me about that and how your project fits in?
Yeah, I think that's what makes it exciting. It's not just that one destination that you sail to or drive to. It is part of the promenade that will be all the way from the opera to the fish market and vitalizing the whole waterfront. I think that's very important. So that's one of the reasons why we thought about designing it out from a more community center perspective. So it is something that gives something back to the community as well, even more maybe than it's just a fish market. It's not a closed building that you walk into. This is an open sort of urban market situation that we're doing, connecting with the whole planning there.
What are some of the trends in architecture that are going on right now that excite you, that you think are positive, that maybe inspire you as an architect?
Here in Sydney or at all?
Anywhere.
What I think about and how we look at architecture, what I think is exciting is it's not only to make buildings as monument icons. We do icons too, but to look at it out from a perspective of what happens in the city. How does the buildings connect to the city? What do they do for this city? And this for me is a sustainable way. It's not sustainable. It's not only about energy. It's about how it connects, how you use it, what it does for the city. So this is a very sustainable way of looking at buildings and cities. And I think this trend is, as I hear at the conference I'm attending to here, is very much in focus everywhere, and in Sydney especially.
The notion that density and sustainability kind of go hand in hand, right? That you want everything to be dense, you want tall buildings so that you can have a lot of people in a small space. Yeah. Public transit is incentivized. That makes sense. But then I think that also, I mean, if driverless cars become a huge thing, if electric vehicles and clean energy come around, then what's so sustainable about everyone being dense? Maybe everyone could commute from far away, or maybe there's a whole new way of organizing society that we don't anticipate yet that would change what we think about. So all this is just to ask, do you think density is really central to sustainability?
I think densification of the cities will come whatever we do, because people are moving to the cities. So I don't know how many people are moving to Sydney, but I suspect there's a lot of people.
A lot, yeah. Yeah. I hear 100,000 new people a year.
Yeah, exactly. And so the centers don't only have the size, so instead of just spreading it out, even that you can spread it out, it will still take too long time to commute. So I think it will densify, it will grow up, and it will go up in the height as well. And I think the big challenge there is to still have the qualities of a lower town. So that's why we have to look at the buildings from down from bottom up instead of from the top down. Right. I think for many years high-rises has been very much about small models and looking at it from the top down and actually looking at it from the bird-eye perspective. But in reality, you experience cities from the ground level, and that's the most important thing, is to design it from the bottom up.
And I guess I'm hearing you say, unless it has that quality of life, it's not sustainable, no matter how much energy efficiency it has. It's got to be enjoyable.
Exactly. It has to be enjoyable. And I think Sydney is a good example. Dubai is not a good example. Dubai is you cannot hardly walk from one building to the other. Here you can. It's becoming more and more walkable, and bicycles are coming more into Sydney as well, as it is in Copenhagen. When I came to Copenhagen 12 years ago, I moved to Copenhagen 12 years ago, there was not half as many bicycles as there is today. So I think that will happen in Sydney as well, and that will make the city really livable, because when you are on foot or biking around, you meet people, you see more what's around you, and it creates a lot of activity that's positive for a city as well.
I think it was last year that Copenhagen passed the landmark of having more bicycles per day in the downtown than cars.
Oh, it has passed that a long time ago.
Oh, a long time ago. Yeah.
I think 90% of my staff, I've got 140 people working in my office, 90% of them come to work by bike. So that's how it is.
What's the role of an architect in promoting more bicycle infrastructure? I mean, doesn't it have to be at the city level, or do you just put more bike parking in your buildings? Or
No. It's a planning issue. The city has to develop that together with us architects. So it's a combination. But you have had Jan Gehl down here. Mm-hmm. You know Jan Gehl, the Danish city planning architect. Uh-huh. He started his career in helping first Melbourne and then Sydney about how to make the city livable. And his philosophy is about seeing things in the eye's perspective. So I think this is how Sydney will develop in the future as well.